The billionaire who mocked the poor woman until she saved his life. In the heart of the city, where skyscrapers kissed the clouds and streets hummed with ambition, there lived a billionaire named Alexander Caldwell. He was a man whose fortune was whispered about in every elite circle, yet it was his arrogance that made him infamous. Alexander had never known struggle, never known hunger, never felt the sting of injustice that came from being overlooked or underestimated. He moved through life with the certainty that his wealth, his power, and his status were shields against any consequence. Yet little did he know, life had a lesson waiting, one that would dismantle the arrogance he wore like a crown. Across the city, in a small, crumbling neighborhood shadowed by the towers he ruled, lived Clara Bennett. Clara was everything Alexander was not. She had known hardship from the earliest days of her life, faced abandonment, and carried burdens that no one with privilege could imagine. Yet she was resilient, kind, and fiercely intelligent. Life had forced her to grow quickly, and in the face of struggle, she had become unyielding. She worked multiple jobs to survive, and yet despite exhaustion, she maintained a spark of hope that the world might one day notice her worth, not for what she lacked, but for what she could offer. Their worlds were destined to collide in a moment that neither could have foreseen. Alexander, attending a charity gala meant to showcase his benevolence, wandered the hall with a smug smile. He had donated millions to causes, but it was a performance to him, a way to ensure his name was praised and printed on invitations to events where influence flowed like champagne. Clara had come to the same event, not by invitation, but by determination. She was there to offer her services as a coordinator for a small foundation seeking funding. The moment Alexander first laid eyes on her, he laughed, an amused, condescending chuckle that carried across the ornate hall. Her clothes were modest, her shoes scuffed, her appearance a stark contrast to the glittering attendees. He mocked her softly, whispering to his companions about how quaint her appearance was, how out of place she seemed. Clara, however, felt a spark not of fear, but of defiance. She could see the arrogance in his eyes, the arrogance of someone who believed life had granted him immunity from accountability or human decency. Despite his initial mockery, Clara was polite. She introduced herself, outlined her proposal succinctly, and with quiet confidence conveyed the vision of the project she was passionate about. Alexander listened, but his interest was feigned. He asked questions with a smirk, as though the answers would be amusing, then laughed when she tried to answer seriously. Many would have recoiled, would have faltered, but Clara remained poised. She could feel her resolve hardening. She knew that beneath his arrogance lay insecurity, a hollow space filled with wealth but lacking humanity. Her eyes met his, and in that brief, charged moment, something unspoken passed between them, a recognition that the world, for all its hierarchy, was unpredictable, and that judgment without understanding could be dangerous. Weeks passed, and Clara's project received no funding. Alexander had dismissed her casually at the gala, laughing at her aspirations in private with his friends. Yet life has a way of circling back. One evening, Alexander's life took an unexpected turn. While returning from a business trip, a series of mishaps, a sudden storm, a careless driver, a bridge under construction, conspired to put him in mortal danger. His car skidded, tires splashing through rainwater, and with a violent jolt he found himself trapped, the vehicle teetering on the edge of disaster. Helpless, he tried to call for assistance, but the storm had knocked out his cell service, and panic began to claw at him. It was Clara who arrived first, by chance, not knowing that the billionaire in the car was the same man who had mocked her so mercilessly. She had been passing through the area, returning from her own late-night work, when she saw the car teetering dangerously. Without hesitation, she called emergency services, tried to stabilize the vehicle, and risked her own safety to ensure the driver could escape. When Alexander realized who was saving him, he was stunned. Shock froze him. The arrogance that had defined his life seemed insignificant as he watched Clara act with courage, intelligence, and selflessness. That night, as Alexander lay in a hospital bed, recovering from injuries that could have been fatal, a flood of reflection overtook him. He realized how trivial his mockery had been, how cruel his laughter was, and how much he had underestimated the strength of those he considered beneath him. Clara did not seek recognition or reward. She did not demand anything. Her eyes held only the same quiet determination and kindness he had first seen at the gala. And in that moment, Alexander understood something profound. Wealth could protect you from many things, but it could not protect you from life's moral reckoning. The weeks following his recovery were transformative. Alexander, previously dismissive of human emotion and vulnerability, began to reassess his relationships, his decisions, and his view of the world. He reached out to Clara, not with patronizing offers or to assert control, but with genuine apology and respect. He listened to her ideas, her dreams, and her vision with humility he had never known, and for the first time in his life, he understood that power and wealth without empathy are hollow, and that the true measure of greatness lies in the ability to recognize value in all people, regardless of status. Clara and Alexander's connection grew from that moment, founded not on wealth or pretense, but on mutual respect, shared insight, and the understanding that life can be cruel and yet beautiful in unexpected ways. The man who had once mocked her learned that true strength lies in compassion, and the woman who had survived adversity realized that even the most arrogant can change when faced with the reality of human vulnerability. Together, they forged a new path, not defined by money, status, or past mistakes, but by the lessons learned through humility, courage, and the willingness to see the world through another's eyes. Alexander's transformation was only beginning. Though the physical scars from the accident had healed, the internal changes were far more profound. He began noticing the people around him in ways he had never allowed himself to before. The assistants who had once been invisible to him were suddenly voices with opinions. The employees who carried out his every command were human beings with stories, fears, and dreams. And always at the forefront of his thoughts was Clara. Her courage that night had shattered his ego, but it had also ignited something he could not name, a respect, an admiration, and an unspoken bond that neither time nor wealth could erase. Clara, for her part, had never expected any reward. She had acted instinctively, a mixture of courage and humanity that could not be measured in dollars or influence. Yet, as Alexander reached out to her after his recovery, she felt a ripple of uncertainty. Could someone like him truly change? Could he look past his pride and arrogance to value her for who she was, rather than what she represented to his status-driven world? She agreed to meet him, not as a subordinate, not as a charity recipient, but as an equal, as someone who refused to let past mockery define her choices. Their meetings began cautiously, with polite conversations about work, philanthropy, and the projects Alexander had dismissed before. But slowly, boundaries blurred. Alexander listened with genuine interest as Clara spoke of the lives she sought to impact, of communities neglected and people overlooked. He discovered that his wealth could be a tool for good, not just a means of self-aggrandizement. Every meeting revealed more about Clara than he had anticipated. Her intelligence, her empathy, her resilience. Each revelation humbled him further. He began questioning every decision he had made in his life, every person he had demeaned, every opportunity to be generous he had squandered out of arrogance. One afternoon, Clara invited Alexander to visit one of the neighborhoods she had been working with for years. As they walked together through streets lined with makeshift homes, broken pavements, and children playing in dust-filled alleys, Alexander saw life from a perspective he had never considered. He watched Clara interact with the families, offering guidance, hope, and support without a trace of condescension. Children ran to her, laughing and shouting, knowing her kindness was genuine. Alexander felt a strange sensation, a mixture of awe and guilt. For decades, he had lived behind walls of privilege, blind to the struggles that shaped people like Clara. Now, he was confronted with the truth he had ignored. The world was vast, complex, and full of resilience that could not be bought or mocked. In the midst of this visit, disaster struck. A sudden fire broke out in one of the makeshift homes, a structure so fragile that collapse seemed inevitable. Panic erupted, and the residents fled, but one small child remained trapped inside. Clara did not hesitate. She ran into the burning building without regard for her safety, reaching the child and carrying them out to safety. Alexander, though terrified, followed instinctively, assisting wherever he could. For the first time, he experienced fear not as a distant concept cushioned by wealth, but as a visceral, consuming force that demanded immediate action. Together, they saved the child, but the event left them shaken and profoundly changed. Afterward, Alexander and Clara sat quietly, smoke from the fire curling around them. Words were unnecessary. They shared a mutual understanding of life's fragility and the power of courage in the face of fear. Alexander realized that his previous life had been shallow, filled with amusement at the expense of others, with victories that meant nothing in the grand scheme of human existence. Clara, for her part, saw in Alexander a man capable of transformation, someone who could choose to wield his influence for the betterment of others rather than his own vanity. Their bond grew stronger as the world watched. People who had once dismissed Alexander's arrogance now saw a man transformed, guided not by ego, but by purpose. Clara became not only his partner in philanthropy, but the lens through which he learned to navigate life with humility, compassion, and awareness. Together they faced obstacles, setbacks, and the lingering shadows of doubt, but always emerged stronger, fueled by shared vision and the understanding that true wealth lies in the lives you touch and the humanity you uphold. Alexander and Clara stood together, looking out over the city that had once separated them by wealth, pride, and circumstance. He had learned humility, she had shown courage, and together they had transformed not just their lives, but the lives of countless others. The billionaire who once mocked the poor woman had discovered the power of empathy, respect, and humanity. And Clara, who had survived hardship and ridicule, had proven that true strength is measured not by wealth, but by courage and heart. Their story became a testament to the fact that life's greatest lessons often come from the most unexpected places. For anyone listening, remember, never judge by appearances, never underestimate courage, and always act with kindness. Share this story to remind someone that transformation is possible, that empathy conquers arrogance, and that heroes can come from anywhere.